Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We have an epic tale to tell today. It's a lot longer than usual. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to the story. 15 years together, 13 married, 4 young kids, wife CA came out a month ago, not sure I'm making the right choice. Advice. Very sorry for the super long-winded nature of this, but want to give as much detail as possible for as accurate advice as possible. Also, this is my first time posting on Reddit, so not quite sure how it all works, but spent all day reading stories here after stumbling upon this subreddit, and many of them and the advice offered spoke to me. I'm 36, my wife is 33, we have 4 young children, all under 11. We have always talked between ourselves that we felt we had a lot of love for each other and filled each other's gaps well, and were very happy to be around each other as well as happy to take care of each other. I think this is a fair assessment of our marriage until 3 years ago we both had large trust issues develop within 6 months of each other. It's ultimately my fault she ended up pregnant with our 4th child. She wanted to be done at 3 and I still held out hope for another 1 or even 2. So I told her I wouldn't support permanent contraceptive when she brought it to me, and through not enough care by me we ended up pregnant with baby number 4. She was not happy, to say the least. About 6 months before the baby came, I heard a rumor that my wife was cheating on me. Allegedly she had heard it from a mutual friend and wanted to warn me of it before I heard it separately. I did not believe her when she told me there was no validity to this rumor, and she claimed to have only interacted with this man alone once and it was fully innocuous by her account. She had no idea where any basis for this rumor came from. After lots of talking, I decided I had to take her word on it with such flimsy evidence and so much at stake in our marriage with the kids and a mostly day-to-day happy life. So there's the basis of our marriage falling apart and getting worse. The past 3 years she resented me for getting pregnant a 4th time and me not being able to let this rumor go, and worsening my trust issues. Continued. After you caught her and agreed to a reconciliation and she went right back to him. It's time to leave that mess. Hopefully you get joint custody, because child support for 4 is gonna have you eating ramen for the next decade. She better hope the phone boy is serious, because there's not a lot of guys that want to take on a woman with 4 small kids. Football, soccer, cheerleading. That doesn't leave much time for a man, as I'm sure you well know. This is a hard one, bro. But it's unlikely she'll ever be faithful. If you cave, she'll just see you as weak. Lol at your and comment. I hear you on that one. 50-50 custody is very common around here, and that's what we're both adamant about having for the kids' sake. She really is a caring, compassionate woman. We're in agreement on pretty much everything so far and are planning on mediation instead of 2 lawyers fighting each other to bankrupt us. I'm going to keep 2 of the 3 cars and the house and just pay out a huge portion of my retirement square deal. Smile. I'm just looking at it as 9 years of back pay for staying home raising the kiddos makes it easier to swallow that way. Your comment about phone boy, lol, is dead on. I feel secret affairs are all fun and games until real life kicks you in the mouth. I just commented in another thread that my buddies rag me because I won't take advantage of good deals on online guitars. It's too personal. I sure as shit ain't gonna commit to a woman I'm not. Fill in the blank. Good luck to you, sir. What do you want here? Do you think this relationship is salvageable or not? It sounds like that the relationship was spiraling and issues were not addressed prior to her making a very bad choice to engage with this man. There is no excuse to go outside a marriage or relationship, even if you were being a controlling asshole. It sounds like you both need individual therapy here, even if you don't decide to stay together. I can tell you from being a BW, almost 3 years into reconciliation, it isn't easy. I can also tell you as a woman, who always had to be the one getting birth control, I did carry some resentment too. We are the ones who end up carrying the offspring and usually doing a majority of the care. We sacrifice a whole lot having children. Try to find some empathy there. If you want to reconcile, you both will have to do some really hard work, and it takes 2 to 5 years or more. But reconciliation is a gift the BP/BS gives and can easily walk away. It also only works if the WS/WP is willing to change and do the work, otherwise, it's a no-go. I don't know what to do for sure. I have been 100% done for 6 weeks and not given her any hint that I'm open to saving our marriage. My second guessing is coming from my wife seemingly doing all the things a truly remorseful spouse is supposed to do, mostly on her own with no hesitation. I really feel like I wasted a chance with a really good woman by just not putting in a little more effort in our relationship. Honestly, it wouldn't have taken a Herculean effort on my part. You're absolutely right, there were many issues that went unaddressed on both sides, and talking about them now it seems they would have been so easy to fix considering the alternative. Hearing her perspective on the 4th pregnancy breaks my heart that I made her feel like she was nothing more than a baby factory for me and was only filling a role in my life. It really sucks that I put her through that, though she maintains she still should not have cheated. No matter how she felt, we both always said if we were unhappy we'd end the relationship, not cheat, and she is embarrassed that she didn't live up to that. She's doing and saying all the right things, but I don't know if I can take them at face value or it's just lip service now that everything fell apart. Therapy would help you sort through your feelings there. It would also help her to find better ways to cope. Many men, when they get married, stop trying. They got married, why try? They got the prize, why work on it? If men and women put as much into marriage as they did in the relationship before marriage, the divorce rate would be much lower. So, we all can do better, even if it appears the causes of the relationship were one-sided. Effort sometimes is everything. Honestly, every BS thinks just like you are now in the beginning. It takes time to heal, and we were betrayed and lied to. We have to seek consistency and change in our WSs, and sometimes there are hiccups through the process too. Many on this subreddit are burn it all down, move on, and once a cheater always a cheater, and in many cases that is the best way. It comes down to if the WS is truly tired and remorseful and wants a change, they have to want it. A better one if you choose to reconcile. https://www.reddit.com/r/as1 after infidelity/ I'm almost 3 years from D-Day. Trickle truthed for 9 months. I had to have the evidence right in front for the truth. It was brutal. But in the beginning I was going to torch it all down, told him to go to his EAP and told her she could have his ass. I could do better without him. I now can say I no longer have the anxiety and am gradually getting to the point of forgiving him, but not what he did. I hope that helps. I would definitely acknowledge that my trying went downhill over the course of 15 years. I always offered so much and did so much for the household that I felt I didn't have to try as much as I did initially when we got together and we started having kids. That's an admitted failing of mine. I will spend some time reading over on that sub in between, trying to keep up on responding here. Thank you for the suggestion. Your last paragraph is hopeful to me. Yes, you are 3 years into it. But you say that it does get easier and better. Like most things, I suppose time heals most wounds, or so I've heard. Thanks for that. Schedule a polygraph as well as DNA tests for the kids. Even if the polygraph isn't 100% reliable, you'll still feel better knowing that she took it. If the kids are yours and she's being truthful about the affair never getting physical, then it will be easier to consider reconciliation for EA that was prompted by the serious divorce tax you were having at the time. She lied not once but twice just to focus on our kids and their future. Believe me, better off single. I know worried about your kids and your financial status, but focusing on your kids will be the best thing you will do other than leaving her. Think about yourself. If I could, I'd give you a pat and a hug, man. It will hurt, but it's going to hurt more by staying with her ass. Life goes on, don't stay in a rut. Yeah, you guys have time on her clock, but really, dude. And if anything, go and cheat too. If she lies about what she did, how do you know she didn't get ducked by his small ass dick? She obviously didn't like the sex if they had it, since she didn't want to talk to him for a while, but then again she went back to talk to him, so honestly best thing to do is to do you and focus on her kids. If she takes your money, then hey, get herself a honey. That'll love you and love your kids. Self-love is important. Don't show fake love to your kids by staying with her. It'll hurt them more by staying with that toxic shit. Listen or not, either way, do what's best for you to have the best for her kids. Thank you for the offer of a hug, and a pat on the back gave me a good chuckle. Ha. And I appreciate your humor in giving your advice. That's 100% how I've felt since this came out. I just don't have a lot of support aside from family that is encouraging me to get past it and stay together. Since March, things have gone significantly downhill. From even the bad of the 2 years prior to that, we were fighting more than ever. I was becoming more controlling and paranoid, thinking I could prevent her from cheating on me. She was growing more and more tired of putting up with my controlling behavior, which I admit, it was. We had 2 or 3 fights over the summer that ended with us saying we should divorce. I took them as just fights, and a few days later or week later we'd settle back into our normal. She took the fights and talk of divorce more seriously. She started looking into lawyers and what divorce entailed. This is when her, as far as I know, emotional affair started. She called a man from the rumor 3 years ago allegedly to seek out divorce advice, as he had recently gone through one, though she admitted it quickly became more than that though, and she said she did it knowing we would be done if I found out about it. But from her perspective, the marriage was over and she thought she was protecting herself and her ability to take care of the kids by being proactive and having a head start on divorce. Going through the phone records, I can see that this was a daily thing, talking 1 to 3 hours on the phone and 100 to 180 texts a day for 3 solid months, every day while she was at work. During this time she might go 1 or 2 days in a row without texting me, which when I brought to her she always chalked up to being too busy while at work. We went on family vacations, did lots of outdoor family activities, and were mostly happy together during this time. She would not contact him at all during these 1 to 3 day family deals, but always right back to it as soon as we were home and she was back to work. In October we had a big fight about me being controlling and her not being happy, and for the first time in our marriage I literally sat down for a long time and thought about what a divorce would really look like, what it would mean for our kids, our day-to-day lives, our finances, and most of all how much I'd honestly miss her if she was gone. Continued. Couple this with my sudden epiphany that no matter how many rules I put in place and how controlling I was, if someone wanted to cheat they would find a way. I came to the realization that I needed to do better for her and start being better, or I was actually going to lose her and our lives were going to turn upside down. So I made small changes, not earth-shattering but obviously noticeable changes, and we started getting along better. She seemed happier, I was happier, and for the first time in a while I was hopeful that we could be happy partners again. She noticed the changes and noticed things were getting better between us in this month's time, because at the end of October she told the OM that she couldn't continue their relationship because she could make herself be okay with it when she thought our marriage was over, but she couldn't deal with the guilt of it now that she felt we had a chance again. The phone records back up her story that she ended it with him when she said she did. She went from all day every day to no contact for a week and then 3/4 days between contact after that. She says she felt bad for using him because he was hoping they were building towards a relationship when our divorce was done, and she just needed someone to fall back on and help her get started in life on her own, and was therefore trying to let him down easily. Of course, just when things seem to be going well, you just know it's all going to hit the fan. I got the cell bill on 11/11 and noticed her calls and texts were considerably higher than mine. Dove deeper in and found that 80% of those calls and texts were to one number. Dove deeper yet and found that it had been going on for 3 solid months with the same number. Finally, after much cross-referencing and researching, I figured out the number was a work number for the man she was accused of 3 years ago of having an affair with. My heart sank. I started shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't hardly breathe. I was holding on to hope that it was anyone but him, telling myself we could work through it if it was anyone but him, but as soon as I saw his face I knew our marriage was done. I confronted her later that day. She of course cried her eyes out and admitted to everything before I presented my evidence that went mostly along with what she was telling me. I do believe her that it didn't become physical because she gave me tremendous detail about their discussions, offered up her phone for me to retrieve deleted text convos, and she was noticeably sad when I showed her current pictures/videos of him and how much he had changed since she last knew him 3 years ago. We spent 3 days and nights up together talking about everything, almost no sleep and no eating, going over all our problems that lead us here and how stupid we both were for letting our marriage get to this point. We're both full of regret for letting our relationship deteriorate this much and sadly felt closer to each other in the days after than we have in years. Right from the initial confrontation I told her we were 100% done. There was nothing she could do to gain my already fragile trust back, and there were no scenarios that could lead us back to a relationship. We sat each kid down by ourselves and had long talks and lots of emotions with them, all letting them know we would not be together anymore, but we'd always both be their parents and always love them and always work together to take care of them. That was 6 weeks ago. We are still living together just to make basic day-to-day life work for now, especially with all the COVID stuff throwing wrenches in every direction, as well as making the transition hopefully easier on the kids. But I have not wavered an ounce from my position that we're 100% done, and all our conversations about the future have had that as a baseline understanding. We're saving money for the divorce. I'm helping her look for a house. We're talking about how we can make our schedules work together. I type all this out and give you all this background to ask this: am I being unreasonably stubborn in my unwillingness to consider saving our marriage? I am known for being very definitive, logical and a bit harsh amongst my friends and family, so it's very hard to consider tolerating an affair, even if it was legitimately not physical, which I can't know for sure, when they all know it's a deal breaker for me. I'm going to miss my wife terribly, and she has said repeatedly she threw her life away for nothing and she would never even consider contacting him if she had only known I even just still wanted her. I don't want to let my kids down. I feel terribly that I let my wife down so much that she was that miserable, though still no reason whatsoever to cheat. End the relationship first. I'm sorry for the incredible length of this post, and if you've read through it, I want to tell you I am very thankful for you taking the time and thought to consider offering advice, and I do promise in return I will read all offered and think on it. Thank you again, truly. Get DNA tests. You know what she wants you to know. She covered it 3 years ago. She had 3 years to come clean and stop it with him. She did not. Instead, allow you to become paranoid and controlling, blaming you for trying to prevent what happened, and she willed it to happen. I suspect your 4th kid is not yours but his. She willfully participates in a relationship of 3 years. Only in her words do you believe it was not physical. Please. You don't spend the whole 8-hour day with someone. Phone him for 180 minutes and exchange 100 of text and you're not physical. Suddenly he divorced and she just wanted to know how. She was leaving you. And realized that you may be the better bet. Check that 4th kid. The one she resented you for. It's her AP kid. It's funny you say that. I asked her if I was only going to need to get a DNA test for the youngest kid or if I needed to get them all checked. She looked at me like I shot her dog or something. I would just like to clarify that I don't have any reason to think she started the relationship before this summer. I don't believe it continued for the whole 3 years. I never had any suspicions like I did, and I went back through 18 months of phone records with no other odd-looking patterns. That was my assessment too, that you don't talk that often and that long without the relationship progressing to physical. My only hold up about that was her offering her phone up for me to recover deleted texts. I declined because I told her it didn't even matter, just that there were texts is more than enough for me to be done. Thank you though for your thoughts. That fact she had that look shows her guilt. I would get a test for all 4 and say the lawyer told you to do it. Dude, test all your kids. Your wife is a liar and can't be trusted. I don't get how you really believe this didn't turn into something physical. On what are you basing yourself? No, you are not stubborn. Your wife is a cheater. She is to blame for this, not you. What are you going to miss when she is gone? A cheater and a liar? You are still young and can easily find a new and better woman. Don't waste your time on her. You are not stubborn. You are smart. I will likely test all my kids eventually, but no result will change me being their dad. I've probably changed more diapers than my wife. Lol. I've always been a very involved and helpful father. I can't imagine not being in my kids' lives. I believe her that it didn't progress to physical based on what I posted above. I do believe her that it didn't become physical because she gave me tremendous detail about their discussions, offered up her phone for me to retrieve deleted text convos, and she was noticeably sad when I showed her current pictures/videos of him and how much he had changed since she last knew him 3 years ago. Probably 80% of our days together were happy with no fights or problems. We really got along well most of the time, and I feel like I wasted a good relationship with a mostly good woman by contributing to our problems and not fixing it, which would not have taken a ton of effort outside of my comfort zone. I should have done better, I think. I don't know, man. Two people having an emotional affair ending up alone in a room and nothing physical happened? I have trouble believing that. Anyway, you should not take the blame for her affair. Nobody is perfect. Everyone can always do better. That's no reason to cheat. Guess who could have also done much and much better? Your wife. Similar but different situations for me. Caught beginnings of EA, but wife seemed not interested or engaged. I pressed, and since there was not anything that made her appear guilty, I trusted her that it was some random guy doing what guys do, trying to flirt on FB. Fast forward 5 months, and D-Day comes and I lose my shit. She lied to my face for 5 months, and the things I read that she was sharing and saying completely and utterly destroyed me. I've never recovered. I worked hard and focused on work to not allow me to really face things in a way that required a definitive decision. It was very quick. I have access to everything, so I've been my own worst enemy and tortured myself the last 4 years. Gaps here and there, not going through things. Then notice more activity/attention being on her phone or tablet, so I'd go snooping and not find anything like the EA, but a lot of thought patterns, attitudes, and beliefs that trigger me and cause me to relive the entire thing over again. I lost my job in August, and that, with being quarantined since March due to my immunocompromised condition, led to me being anxiety-ridden and depressed because all I have is day in and day out trigger-laden misery, and it's like D-Day was last week, yesterday, etc. It blows. I'm preparing for a discussion with her by writing through things to process everything and share all of this with her. It's going to be difficult, but I can't continue living like this. I need there to be something definitive for us to move forward fully reconciled. I love her and don't want to be done, but I need to know where she really stands and if she is here because she wants to be and not just for the kids, etc. All that to say, if you love her and can't imagine living without her, but can find a way for sincere, honest transparency on her end, and yours, then I'd argue give it one more shot, knowing if she crosses and predetermined and discussed boundaries, you are done. Get out and move on. Otherwise you'll be worse off and miserable staying while she continues to mistreat you and take advantage of your kindness. Also, MC is a must and probably the only way you'll make it together. Sorry for oversharing. I'm in the heat of trying to heal and move forward and write everything down to discuss with my wife to attempt to move towards mutual/joint legitimate reconciliation with hopes if living without crushing anxiety and depression, because at this point I'm terrified of getting a new job that's a good opportunity and losing it because I'm a complete flake right now with my depression and anxiety. I am apathetic as shit and have contemplated suicide as my only option to get relief. I'm too big of a wuss to actually harm myself, but the idea of not existing is super attractive some moments every day. Best wishes and hope you find something helpful and hopeful here. I'm not exactly hopeful Harry these days, more end it Edward. Good luck. Dang man, I feel for you. I've never had depression or anxiety issues aside from the 3 days after finding out and couldn't sleep or eat or hardly think straight. To go through that on a regular basis would be awful and very debilitating. My 3-day stint with it helped me empathize with my wife a bit, who's had those issues for most of our marriage. I'm lucky in a lot of ways, 4 mostly happy kids, a great job. I've had nearly 20 years solid and am in very good health/shape. I know I'll get through this with zero doubt or hesitation. I don't say this to brag or rub it in. Just to say, even with all those things going in my favor, it still freaking sucks. Smile. I obviously don't know you personally, but I feel comfortable in saying that most people are capable of making it through things that are so much bigger than they think they can conquer. So with that as a basis, I wish you good luck in your confrontation, and I hope you get the answers you need to make a good decision for your family. Dude, you refused your wife control over her own body, knocked her up when she didn't want to, carried your 4th child for 9 ducking months because you said no to more permanent contraceptives. And she's having an emotional affair and you wonder why? How thick does one have to be to realize she's depressed as shit, and basically your hand forced this? Oh no, I hope you didn't misread that. I don't know where this is coming from. We've talked through every aspect of how we ended up here. I've apologized many times for my part in us arriving here. I've literally told her how sorry I am for making her get to this point, that it's my fault she felt she was trapped and depressed. And we've both also talked about, even in that scenario, cheating shouldn't be the solution. She told me she thought she was going to be destitute after the divorce and panicked, so she sought out someone she had heard was interested in her as a backup. This is of course her version. My line about it is I drove us to the cliff but she did a double backflip off of it. Lol. We're both being very reasonable and level-headed, all things considered. I think you both need therapy, honestly. And I also think that you didn't drive her to the edge, you made her body not her own. You threw her down the cliff, ma dude. And she's reacted in a way that honestly makes sense. If she can't forgive you, I get it, but dude, what you did was absolutely awful and selfish. Your sentiments echo hers, and I do feel terrible for how it made her feel. I don't feel like I'm downplaying my role in our situation. I've apologized for pushing her to this point probably as many times as she's apologized for committing to cheating on me. That's why I made this post and posed my question. I know I had a big part in driving her to do this, but still don't freaking do it. Ha. We both always agreed that if we were unhappy we'd end the relationship, not cheat. She's upset with herself for not living up to her own morals and mad that I didn't tell her and make it clear to her how important she was to me before everything fell apart. Well, there's still tomorrow. You both ducked up more than her. Understand this, and if you want to fix it, get some ducking therapy. Honestly man, if I was your wife I'd try to change you with child entrapment and or rape. If you came to her when she asked you not to, that is marital assault, so check yourself and check yourself hard. Well, thank ducking God you aren't his wife. You know, there's a shit ton of ways to avoid pregnancy. Op didn't want to go a permanent route, which is a wise choice. If someone does something permanent to themselves, they cannot undo it later if they change their mind. It takes 2 to tango. Op's wife is every bit as responsible for child number 4 as Op is. His wife wanted a more permanent contraceptive. It might have even been for herself and he said no. And she didn't want another baby, but they had another baby anyway. Tell me that doesn't sound like child entrapment. And clearly you have zero idea of what it's like carrying a child for 9 months, especially a child you didn't particularly want. Child entrapment? What are the other 3 children? You know, number 1, 2 and 3? Nothing? Child entrapment, aka baby trapping, is the other way around, takes place with child number 1 and usually before the couple is married. Also usually perpetrated by a woman. Not saying men don't intentionally get a woman pregnant so they can marry them, but it is most often men who are victims of it. I have been through this myself. My son's mother tried to do it to me. I don't resent her for it at all. I don't resent my son's existence. To be honest, I'm more sorry that it didn't work. But for you to sit there and claim that Op raped his wife is outright bullshit and very malicious. You sound more like Op's STBX in trying to justify her affair, and there is no justifying an affair. 1, 2 and 3 were a choice. Number 4 she didn't want. God, you seem to have no empathy or understanding. Oh no, that's absolutely not what happened. To try to clarify, we only had to try to get pregnant once out of the 4 pregnancies. We are both very fertile. Apparently we always joked we had to be careful looking at each other or she might end up pregnant. The pregnancy was my fault because I wasn't as worried about having another kid and I didn't support her being done having kids, and yes, I realize now how ducked up and selfish that was. I've apologized many times for failing her in that sense and realize fully that's why we ended up here. She wants to stay together and reconcile, offering to accommodate any restriction I'd want to put on her to rebuild trust, but I don't think she'd be happy with that 6 months down the road, and it's probably not healthy either, and then it would just lead to her further resenting me, so we'd be right back here again. She would be the first to tell you in all other aspects before the 4th baby she adored me and always praised what I gave her in our relationship. I know that broke our relationship for her, but I thought 3 years down the road she had gotten over it, but I suppose that was stupid of me to think, considering I hadn't gotten over the rumored affair from 3 years ago. Feel free to continue giving me your unfiltered opinion. You obviously owe me no sugarcoating. Just trying to rationalize both sides as clearly as I can. Thanks for your input. What she did is a defense mechanism because she felt like her husband didn't have her best interests at heart, and guess what, she's right. You're way out of line. He didn't rape her. She is a grown adult, and all adults know getting pregnant is a risk when having sex unprotected, and even protected by condoms or birth control. There is no reason that is ever justified to have any kind of affair, EA or PA. Mature adults talk out their problems, not get revenge by crushing and tearing out the heart of the person you vowed to love, honor, and protect. Honestly, it can happen. And it does, lol. There is only one question you need to ask yourself. Does it hurt more to be with her or without her? Answer that, and you will know what you must do. That is really the crux of it, I know, but my thoughts are, even if I stayed with her, there's no way I could treat her better than I did when she was miserable and hated me after the affair, so what would be the point? I feel like we'd be right here in a year's time. Of course, sometimes a chance is better than not. I'm having trouble buying your wife's version of events. If I understand the timeline correctly, 3 years ago, you say you talked her out of birth control, she ends up pregnant, and a short couple months later this rumor of her cheating with this guy comes out. Sounds like this other guy was married at the time, and you don't know the real source of the rumor. That rumor is a huge red flag. Did you ever talk to this alleged mutual friend that shared the rumor? Could you still? Your wife was doing some major damage control in squashing that rumor, and it doesn't sound like she gave any logical reason as to why someone would start that rumor. Maybe this guy's wife found out and was threatening to contact you? In my mind, the fact that she ran straight to him as soon as your relationship took a downward turn seems give a lot of weight to that rumor 3 years ago. Regarding the pregnancy, it could be you weren't careful enough to not get her pregnant, but given that rumor a short time later, it is possible that she was having a physical affair at that point and she doesn't know who the baby's father is. If that was the case, she's pregnant and AP isn't a safe bet because he is still married, and there are 4 kids for her to think about now, and you are the safer bet. It could also be that the baby is yours, but her pregnancy was enough for one or both of them to cool their jets. Fast forward 3 years, and your relationship is not great, but bumping along business as usual when it suddenly takes a major nosedive at exactly the same time this other guy finalizes his divorce. Do you think it is a coincidence that she gets the idea to contact a lawyer and at the same time just happens to think, hey, that guy that I didn't have an affair with 3 years ago is an oracle of knowledge about divorce and I just need to talk to him? Is that a plausible coincidence, or is it more likely that they cooled off their affair for a while until she heard this guy finally got divorced, or he reached out to her saying he is available? Now he is a viable option for her, and she resumes the affair and throws a grenade in your relationship with the intent of leaving you and running to him now that his ex is out of the way. I also find it hard to believe this guy is investing hours and hours every day talking/texting a woman for months on end without it getting physical. That guy must have the patience of Job or the worst case of blue balls in the history of mankind. Your wife saying she's willing to give you access to her phone could support her version of events. However, does she know that you could recover emails and texts that she deleted, or does she think they are gone forever? Or could it be that she was smart enough not to write anything too incriminating down on text or email where you could discover it? Or does she know that the things she really doesn't want you to know were spoken during all those hours of phone calls rather than written down? She's offering full access either because she is telling you the truth or because she thinks there is nothing for you to find. Doesn't sound like she has been very truthful about a lot of things to you. Also curious about your wife's reaction to the paternity test. Do you think her reaction was more shock/hurt that you would even dare ask such a thing, because she didn't actually have a physical affair, or do you think it was that she doesn't really know who the father is? Or could she suspect that it might be his and knows a paternity test could crash the whole story down? Her version of events has her innocent 3 years ago, and justifying at least an EA when she thought you were over. Her story conveniently seems to shift most if not all of the blame away from her. We've talked about the rumor at length. The gist of her version is, a woman they both know made a joke about the two of them being together in passing, and within a few days it had become more of a rumor than a joke, and the initial women that made the comment felt terrible about what had happened and how badly it affected our marriage. I believe pretty much the origin of the rumor. She's shown me conversations with the woman where she's offered to call and explain what happened for whatever that'd count for. She acknowledged that choosing to contact him would absolutely make everyone think that rumor from 3 years ago was true, and chose to anyway because she thought I was going to leave her and she'd be destitute. She admits she wanted him as a backup and was using him, although I have absolutely considered that I am the backup plan. Lol. I have absolutely always had the worry about baby number 4 not being mine, but never enough to actually go get testing. I do plan on getting all 4 kids tested after we are separated, just don't need any more complication with divorce, and it wouldn't change me taking care of my kids. These are 100% my kids no matter DNA test results. Lol. I'm a very active and loving father and could never imagine not being with them. It's funny you mention him being an oracle of divorce knowledge and she just had nowhere else to turn. I brought that up too. Ha. She admits that's not why she called him. She called him because she had heard he was interested in her and figured he'd be easy to get him to help her start over. Not a great show of character, I admit. I agree that I don't buy he invested all that time and energy while getting nothing but a possible future relationship with a woman he barely, allegedly, knew 3 years ago. I told her there were programs to recover deleted text messages and emails from her phone, and she offered it to me right there to do it. That's why I'm having such second guessing. There's so many red flags, but she's also been very accommodating to all my questions and threats. She's literally said she would take whatever draconian restrictions I wanted to put on her if it meant we could stay together, but obviously that wouldn't last and wouldn't be healthy and would lead to her resenting me even more. Also, most of the calls were during the workday around co-workers in a business casual setting, so I don't think most calls were hot and heavy. She swears almost all their convos was just dumb buddy stuff, but fully admits it was more than friends and she knew it was wrong the whole time. As to the paternity test question, she honestly looked heartbroken that I'd even suggest it, but told me to go for it, and I told her I planned on it. She hasn't brought it up since. Definitely agree that most of the blame is being laid on me from her end, and while I know I played my part in making her miserable and wanting out, she still should not have cheated, and every time I bring that up she fully agrees. She distraught because I told her more accurately how I felt about her in the weeks after finding out than I did during the rest of the marriage. I'm getting a lot of "why couldn't you tell me this before? If I knew you felt like this I would have never even considered contacting him. Thanks for all the thought. I can see that you have given all those questions a lot of thought. While there are still red flags there, she seems to have explanations that could add up to the truth. albeit a watered-down and convenient version that minimizes her blame/guilt. Basically, that the rumor wasn't true, but it planted a seed that took root after she thought your relationship was over and she fed and watered it from there. In regard to the paternity test, I absolutely commend you on your commitment to your kids. I was adopted myself, and I've known that my entire life. My parents aren't my adopted parents, they are my parents. I waited 44 years to seek out my biological mom because I was worried that my parents would be hurt by my curiosity. They weren't at all. Sharing the same blood and DNA couldn't make me love them any more than I do. I can guarantee your kids love you as their father no matter what, and a paternity test wouldn't change that. If the outcome of that paternity test isn't going to have any bearing on your decisions to be there for your kids, and you have already made up your mind that you are not going to reconcile with your wife, which it sounds like you have, then I don't know that I would do it if I were in your shoes. I'd be worried that knowing might alter my relationship with my kids in a negative way. There were obviously problems in your marriage that you had a part in, but in the end your wife chose to step out of the marriage and chose another man. If you did choose to reconcile, all of those problems would still need to be fixed, which would take a lot of work on both of your parts. It sounds like your wife is willing to take many of the steps that would need to be taken toward reconciliation. At least a lot more so than many of the WSs on these subs are offering their BSs. Bottom line is that I don't hear much if any wavering in your conviction to divorce your wife, but you are looking for a way to justify to others why you have come to that decision and that it is reasonable. In the end, you need to do what is best for you and your children, and others need to respect that. If your wife's actions crossed a line for you that you don't feel you can reconcile and you don't think you could rebuild a relationship with her that wouldn't be a toxic environment for your kids, then that is your answer. Sounds like she is committed to doing what is right for your kids also, and is not going to fight you in custody or sabotage your relationship with your kids. If you think you can separate amicably and co-parent your kids in a healthier environment than what you could give them while living together, then people should respect that. I'm so sorry you're going through this, but it sounds like you've got a good head on your shoulders and aren't making rash decisions without careful consideration. Yes, I am for sure obsessing over every aspect of the affair and our marriage problems. We both just wish we fixed them before they became fatal. I worry about your assessment as well. Isn't it just convenient that everything that happened is exactly what I know about? I can't think of any additional betrayal she just told me about, which is of course plausible if it was 100% only calls/texts that she was engaged in, and part of my holdup is that I can't know concretely what was happening. I'm stuck relying on her version of things yet again. I also share your fear that finding out one of my kids isn't biologically mine could be detrimental to our relationship, though I of course would like to think I'm above it. I really don't think any of the 4 kids aren't mine, but I really would like confirmation just so it's one less unknown with my wife. I fully expect all 4 kids to be mine, but would not be blown away if not. I agree she's been totally amicable towards doing whatever she needs to keep us together and fix our marriage. She really is a compassionate, caring, usually sweet woman. She's offered an immediate answer to any question I've had and told me come to her as often and whenever I feel the need to go over something again or have a new question. I really feel like she wants to help me get past this, even if just for my own benefit, but maybe I am just being played. I don't know, to be honest. I would say that I've been 100% on team divorce since this happened and have presented nothing else to my wife since this came out. I feel like I had to post this story seeking advice almost in the hopes that someone could talk me out of my steadfastness in seeking a divorce. I feel like in my lack of considering reconciliation I am being blind to probably the better option just for the sake of my pride and humiliation. I honestly feel like I'm willing to be more miserable without her than to let her off the hook and probably be happier down the road together, even if it's several years, just for the sake of saving face and not having to swallow my pride. I know a lot of this probably doesn't sound very rational, but I'm still not sure what the right move is. Like you said, so far it seems like co-parenting will be on the easier side of things for us, but I'm worried as things progress she might get less and less accommodating. Thank you again for your thoughts on this. I wish I had better advice for you, but I don't see any clear and easy answers. Your reply did touch on something that I thought of including in my previous reply. And that is pride. You sound very much like me in many ways. Very thoughtful and well-reasoned in your decisions, and also a man of principles whose word means something. For me, it is a matter of personal integrity that if I say I am going to do something, I do everything in my power to make sure I am true to my word and follow through on my commitments. That goes for my professional life as well as my marriage. And loyalty is something I value highly. I think those personality traits are a good thing, and also tie into my sense of self-respect and self-worth. But at times I do wonder whether some of my reactions to certain situations come from self-respect or whether they come from pride. I'll share a Cliff Notes version of a situation I went through with my wife that came very close to ending our marriage. About 10 years ago, a woman who was my wife's best friend at the time tried to break up our marriage so she could be with my wife. This woman was married to a man at the time, who was a friend of mine, but they later divorced him and is now living with a woman. My wife is a very selfless and giving person who loved this woman like a sister, not romantically at all, but this woman was jealous of our marriage, and manipulated my wife to gain her confidence to the point my wife shared every intimate detail of our marriage and every insecurity she had. This woman then twisted and weaponized that information to convince my wife I was a horrible and controlling husband. We went from a stable and healthy relationship to the point where I could do nothing right. At one point my wife told me that I wasn't giving her what she needs emotionally, and that her emotional connection to her friend was far stronger than ours had ever been. That absolutely ripped out my heart and crushed it. The situation eventually got so bad that my wife was devoting probably 8 hours a day to maintaining her relationship with this woman, and had nothing left to give me. Many of those hours she was spending sitting on the couch holding that woman in her arms while our kids played together. I discovered that by asking my 9-year-old son what the two of them did all that time during their play dates. He innocently told me, they just sit on the couch the whole time and hug each other. For our own end daily. I walked in on them sitting on the couch holding each closely, and they both quickly separated guiltily like two horny teenagers getting caught by their parents. I thought, maybe my wife is attached to women. I finally saw the situation for what it was. This woman was infatuated with my wife and wanted her for her own. I finally reached the limit of my endurance, and told my wife that this ends now, you either choose me or choose her. Fortunately, this snapped my wife back to reality and I was able to get her to start seeing clearly what this woman was doing. It took a while to untangle our lives and go full no contact with this woman, but my wife made the right steps to do so, and we were able to reconcile our marriage. My wife never understood how deeply betrayed I felt, how deeply she hurt me, and how close I came to walking away and seeking a divorcing her. If she hadn't taken the steps to go no contact and fix the situation, I think my pride would have driven me to hold to my word and divorces her. In hindsight, that would have been the biggest mistake of my life. After years of healing and many deep discussions, we both can see now that my wife allowed herself to be drawn into the relationship with this woman, but there was never any romantic or sexual attraction there on my wife's part. Yes, she let it get out of hand. Yes, she allowed someone else to come between us, which I viewed as breaking our marriage vows. Yes, she chose to prioritize that relationship far above our marriage. But my wife is a fixer by nature, and she got sucked into trying to help this friend and her kids deal with the absolute chaos of this woman's failing marriage and messy divorce. Helping others is at the core of my wife's identity, and this woman used that to manipulate and abuse her emotionally and draw her ever further in. Always telling my wife she wasn't helping enough, wasn't a good friend, needing her to stay with her just one more hour to be there for her, and belittling her at every opportunity to maintain power over my wife. So, what I saw at the time was my wife having a deep emotional affair and quite possibly a physical affair. Her reality was that she loved this woman like a sister, and got drawn in trying to help with the best intentions but lost sight of who she was, and the damage being done to our marriage. While I would have been completely justified in divorcing my wife, in my mind, had she not gone no contact in fairly short order, I would have done so in error and in no small part due to pride at being betrayed and disrespected. It took me a long time to fully understand the depth to which she had been manipulated, gaslighted, and emotionally abused. She was not able to have a close/healthy friendship with any other women for several years. It took a lot of loving support from me to help her heal, and it took a lot of loving support from my wife for me to heal. I can honestly say today that our marriage is far stronger than it has ever been, and we are able to communicate and connect on a deep emotional level that we never were able to before all this. So, circling back to your situation, you are stuck with a lot of questions about your wife's story that you may or may not ever find an answer to. Without hard proof that anything more went on, you're going to have to trust your gut and make a decision with some risk of it being the wrong one. What you do know is that she chose to have at least an EA with this guy, and that crossed a major boundary for you. You have shown that you have self-respect, and are not willing to be a doormat. And that is fully justified. You don't deserve to be treated that way, and you will not be treated that way. However, I think you need to do some soul searching to ask yourself whether your decision is at least in part born out of pride and the need to save face. If you said cheating was a deal breaker for you, and you would divorce her, is the need to stay true to that word a major motivator in proceeding with divorce in the face of some doubts? Also, what is the emotional and financial cost of delaying your decision on divorce? Can you continue down the legal path to divorce while carefully examining your feelings on the pride issue, getting the paternity test, and keeping a chance for reconciliation on the table? I think there could be some value in recovering your wife's deleted texts and emails and talking to the woman that started the rumor 3 years ago. You may not turn up hard evidence, but you may get a few more hints as to which version of events is more likely to be true. One final thought is that I think you need to spend some time exploring the root causes that lead to a rift in your marriage and what your part in those were. I am not at all saying that it is your fault that your wife chose to step out, but that you need to separate those root causes from the cheating. What mistakes did you make in the relationship, and what things weren't you doing that you could have been doing to better communicate or connect with your wife? I think examining those root causes and lessons learned will bear fruit for you. I think making positive changes to improve yourself will help you be a better partner/spouse in your next relationship if you choose divorce. I think it would be absolutely necessary if you tried reconciliation with your wife. I also think it would help you to have a better/healthier co-parenting relationship with your ex-wife if it goes that way. You are not perfect. I guarantee you made plenty of mistakes in your marriage. And that is not a criticism or judgment. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, and learning from them and working to improve yourself is always a good investment. I know I had some things I could have done better earlier in my marriage that would have taken away most of the ammunition that women use to cast doubts in my wife's mind about our marriage. Things that I have since addressed that have strengthened my marriage and made me a better father. I truly hope you are able to find a path forward that brings you peace and allows you to help your kids adjust to what the future brings in a healthy way. Man, seriously, thank you so much for spending so much mental energy and effort on offering your thoughtful advice. It's been very helpful. I feel like I identify with you a lot and mirror the sentiments you're expressing about having a lot of self-respect, being prideful, loyal, principled and relying on personal integrity as a base for my personality, though maybe that last one I'm assuming for you. I can't even list the times I've made decisions contrary to my own interests simply for the sake of it's what I thought was right or what should be done. Reading through your story, I can absolutely identify with what you went through. The line about spending 8 hours a day with her and having nothing left for you especially rang true for me. I'm sure that your wife having no romantic interests in this other woman was a large comfort for you in deciding what to do, though, as you said, and I agree that you were fully in the right for being ready to be done. Romance or not, you were put second in your marriage and it sounds like it went on for a long time. Also, I agree that from your perspective it was a super involved emotional affair and sure looked and sounded physical as well. From your story it definitely sounds like you and your wife made the right choice and now you are much happier for it, so congrats for that. Smile, it really does sound like a perfect storm that could have ended your marriage if you weren't proactive in addressing it and being willing to give her an ultimatum. However, I think you need to do some soul searching to ask yourself whether your decision is at least in part born out of pride and the need to save face. If you said cheating was a deal breaker for you, and you would divorce her, is the need to stay true to that word a major motivator in proceeding with divorce in the face of some doubts? This paragraph is 100% accurate, no soul searching needed. Probably 30% of my drive for divorce is saving face and my own pride, along with sticking to my word of being done now that there's verifiable cheating that isn't able to be explained away. I agree with you about if I had some texts I could get a glimpse of their interaction and that could lean one way or the other. When I was dead set on being done I didn't care what they said, but now that I'm reconsidering I really do think it would be helpful. My worry now is 6 weeks since she last contacted him. I think most the deleted stuff would be gone for good, though maybe I'm mistaken in that thought. It's something I'll look into. We have both talked about and agreed it wasn't all sunshine and flowers before this spring where things started going more downhill, and even if we got through this there is still plenty that needs addressed and fixed for both of us. Although, as you mentioned, for your marriage, your bond was strengthened by what you worked through and the changes you both made. That's what we'd have to likely spend years on improving, even if I could forgive and move on. As time goes on and things get further into the past it seems like more of a possibility, but still it is very, very hard to imagine myself not being paranoid every time my wife heads off to town on her own or the phone dings while sitting on the countertop. Thank you again for all your thoughts and advice in helping me work through this in my mind. As I mentioned in another post, I don't have much of a support network aside from direct family encouraging me to get over it and move on together. Thanks, sincerely. No problem, brother. I hear you feeling alone in your decision. I was in that same boat. I am more the strong silent type, and don't reach out to others for advice easily. I am close to my parents, but rarely had deep emotional conversations with my mom, and never with my dad. To this day, they know nothing about that whole situation. I had some good friends, but confided in them very little. So, it was just me against the world. Didn't even know a place to look online for advice, other than a few articles on emotional affairs, which I shared with my wife, and at the time she didn't think applied to her or understand them. I have to admit I am a little nervous offering advice because I don't want to steer you in the wrong direction. Reading many of the stories on these subreddits, you can often see a clear path forward and an obvious answer that oftentimes the BS can't see clearly because they are clouded by emotion. Your case is tougher because your wife seems so willing to do what is needed to reconcile. Still, that is a gift that you have to offer her, not one that she can earn on her own. In my case there were a number of circumstances that made it far easier to reconcile. As you correctly pointed out, the fact that my wife was not romantically entangled was a big one. The fact that the EA was with a woman was another, since there weren't nearly the same feelings if emasculation as there would have been had it been a man. And the final one being that my wife was never outright lied to me. For the most part, she would tell me when she was going to be with her friend. I did spend countless nights watching the kids, then going to bed alone wondering what she was doing and when she would come back, but at least I knew where she was. Mamd who she was with. It wasn't until near the end that I was aware that she was spending nearly every day over at her house for hours on end, which was definitely an omission on her part since I was starting to push back pretty hard at that point. But she didn't lie to me when I confronted her about it. So yeah, many things that made it easier to reconcile. In your case, as in many cases of infidelity, reconciliation isn't the easy way out. That doesn't mean it can't be the right choice if the circumstances are right. I can say from my reconciliation experience there were and still are some triggers that I deal with. Not too often, but they're just the same. It took my wife a while to have close friendships with other women again. She now has 2 very close female friends that I know well, am good friends with their husbands. My wife does spend a fair bit of time with those friends and I support her fully in that, but when they go out for a girls' night, or go away on a weekend trip together, the initial mention of those events makes me sick to my stomach. I choke it down pretty quick and it passes quickly, because I don't get any of the same red flags from these two women that I got from the other one. So, I have had to learn to trust her again in that regard, but I am also more vigilant, and talk to her about any concerns I have, and she is great at being open about it and calming my fears. From reading some of the other reconciliation stories on Reddit, I see a lot of similarities in my experience and those of others who have or are successfully reconciling. A good analogy for reconciliation is like two climbers climbing a mountain. You both are roped together trying to get to the summit, and if either climber isn't pulling their weight, you'll never get to the top. If one climber decides to stop or slide back down the mountain, it is over. How big the mountain is depends on a lot of factors. For me, the factors I mentioned above reduced the size of the mountain quite a bit, but you were right, this situation went on for a long time. I don't remember exactly how long since my wife had been friends with that woman our entire marriage, and it all ended at the 14-year mark in our marriage. Things built slowly like a frog in a pot of boiling water, but I'd say the questionable parts of their relationship lasted at least 3 years, but in hindsight maybe closer to 5. I think one thing you may want to ponder a bit further is forgiveness. I think a lot of people misunderstand true forgiveness. First off, forgiveness is all about you, not about her. Forgiveness doesn't mean you condone her cheating, or let her off the hook, nor does it mean either of you will forget what happened or pretend it never did. Forgiveness is about letting go of all the anger and hatred you have, and stop letting it blacken your heart and control you. Letting all that go is the only way to truly heal and move forward in your life, with or without her, in a healthy way. True forgiveness doesn't just happen overnight, it takes time. In my situation, I can honestly say I have forgiven my wife 100%. I know that because I don't hold it against her and I don't use it as leverage in disagreements. And I have even learned to forgive her former friend. Rather than having anger and hatred toward that woman, I feel indifference and even a bit of empathy. I know she has dealt with a lot in her life, and I suspect had a lot of abuse and trauma in her past, but I don't wish her ill. That doesn't mean that I will ever let her anywhere near my wife or kids. Shortly after my wife cut contact, her former friend turned on her in a vicious way, and said/did a lot of things that hurt my wife. She also found another married woman to attach herself to, and successfully broke up that woman's marriage, and the two of them are now living together. It's not my job to see that she is punished or even held accountable for her actions. I've moved past it and her dealings are no longer my concern. In your case, you'll need to forgive your wife in time. It will be requisite for any reconciliation attempt, but is still necessary if you are going to try and work together in a co-parenting relationship. Even if you didn't have kids and could just walk away and never see her again, you'll still need to let the anger go so you can move on and have a healthy relationship with your kids and any future partner/spouse you have. Make no mistake, there are going to be triggers and trust issues going forward if you attempt to reconcile. Trust can be restored to a significant degree over time, but likely not ever to what it originally was. The triggers will always be there, but over time they may lessen and you both may become better at recognizing them and dealing with them together. Earlier today I had a long discussion with my oldest son who is home from college for the holiday. He needed some relationship advice because he is getting interested in a girl after being out of the dating game for over a year after his high school girlfriend cheated on him. We talked a lot about setting boundaries in relationships, and the topic of my wife's EA came up. He would have been between 9 and 11 years old during the latter stages and had a front row seat and picked up on a lot more than I realized. He told me a few years ago, he asked my wife if she was a lesbian because he remembers going to that woman's house and them laying in bed holding each other. That detail was a big trigger for me. In hindsight, I recall asking him what they did all day and him telling me that, but in my mind I only envision them sitting on a couch together, not lying in a bed behind closed doors. After my son left, I had a talk with my wife about my son, but also about that trigger. She let me know that she had reassured my son about not having romantic feelings for that friend, and she once again reassured me that nothing romantic or sexual had ever occurred. My wife explained that they would go to the bedroom when discussing issues related to her marriage so that her kids wouldn't hear her talking about the issue with their father. My wife also said she didn't recognize it as a red flag because she had spent many hours lying in bed talking with her sister as her sister was going through divorce. But she absolutely sees it as a red flag now. Working through those triggers together is actually bringing us closer together. To a large extent, that while situation isn't something I dwell on a daily basis, my wife's former friend is still someone we see in passing situations that are unavoidable, small town, and even smaller social circles that intersect. You'll obviously have more triggers than I have to work through in your case. In that regard, divorce may be the easier road emotionally in the long run because you can gain some distance from those triggers, and the trust issues will be lessened because once she is no longer your wife, you are no longer obligated to trust her other than for matters related to your kids. Of course, divorce has a lot of other legal and financial implications, and I haven't been down that road, so I can't be much help there, and I also can't really comment on how hard it is emotionally to let go of someone you love during a divorce. Hope you can find something of use in that word salad. Hang on there, this is incredibly hard at the moment, but whatever you decide, I think you will be okay in the long run. As with these affairs, there's usually more that happened than you truly know or can trust. The fact she brought this rumor to you nearly proves it, as she was doing damage control. Honestly, considering how well y'all are getting on, I'd highly suggest y'all seek out couples counseling. Even if y'all can't reconcile, it would be a great endeavor to learn to be good co-parents. And it may be a great way for both of you to learn to communicate effectively and recognize the poor patterns that got you to this spot in the first place and avoid them in the future. And there's the 1 in a million chance you can settle into staying. If you're even considering staying, this is a must due to recent behaviors and attitudes. It's your choice in what you really want here. You have all the right to walk away from the marriage. You've already set a lot in motion by telling the children, so they will continue to be confused by events. Not saying this is a reason to leave, but definitely consider some counseling for them as well. You hit on a huge thing we've both been torn up about. Why couldn't we be this open with each other and communicate our problems/needs, fears clearly beforehand? We both could have stopped this from getting to this point if our communication was better. We're family friends with the school counselor, and she has been great with the kids and very sweet in doing Zoom calls with the kids, but as the process moves forward, I do think we'll seek out more consistent counseling for them. As many people have suggested, marriage counseling makes me feel like I really need to consider it, although in the past I would never have agreed to it. Again, it can be helpful to even learn to co-parent and gain some closure in the marriage. Don't always think of it as only for reconciliation. Did you ask again about the cheating rumor from 3 years ago? We've talked about the rumor at length. The gist of her version is, a woman they both know made a joke about the two of them being together in passing, and within a few days it had become more of a rumor than a joke, and the initial women that made the comment felt terrible about what had happened and how badly it affected our marriage. She acknowledged that choosing to contact him would absolutely make everyone think that rumor from 3 years ago was true, and chose to anyway because she thought I was going to leave her and she'd be destitute. She admits she wanted him as a backup and was using him, although I have absolutely considered that I am the backup plan. Lol. You should definitely err on the side of caution and not believe her words. She's been cheating and lying to you for how long? And did you ever talk to that woman? No, my wife showed me conversations with her where she offered to talk to me and explain the origin of the rumor, but I never took her up on it, as I felt the lady would just be repeating whatever my wife told her to say and didn't see any benefit from hearing my wife's version of the story from her. Divorce is freaking hard. What are you going to do with 4 kids? I'd consider reconciliation. She offered you her phone, which would prove if they met up. Why not try counseling? You admit you were in a bad spot too. The grass is not greener, and it sounds like she is remorseful. Just because this gets downvoted doesn't mean I'm wrong. I hope to see you on r/SN after infidelity soon. I know just the day-to-day scheduling is going to be a nightmare, plus I'm looking at losing 3/4 of my retirement and missing my best friend of 15 years that I've only been away from 5 or 6 days in that time. Of course, staying together is the easy, less stressful solution, but I'm just worried if I do that we're right back here in a year where I'm paranoid about every phone ding and she can't wait to be away from me every day. Then what's the point? I really think you are deluding yourself about it not being physical. Why do you think she engineered the whole cheating scenario? Her idea, she tells you, and being your wife, your rose-colored glasses are on and you take her word for it. She started the rumor so she could control the narrative. If anyone does mention to you at a later date about them spending time together or that she might be cheating, she of course warned you that this may happen. This allows her to say "I told you so" and for her to continue cheating and controlling the narrative. Your wife, the love of your life, wouldn't lie to you, would she? Thus she has made you aware of the situation should they be caught out at some stage. However, because you believe in your wife, she has done her job and made you totally unaware of what they have really been up to. Your wife secretly had an affair behind your back, possibly physical, admittedly emotionally. Even if it was physical, some husbands would reconcile. Others would not. I don't find either position to be unreasonable. What I do find unreasonable is you having to make a decision based on lack of reality, based on facts. You don't know if your wife was having an affair, physical or not, a few years ago with her current admitted emotional affair partner. My observation reading here is that the cheater knows way more than the betrayed spouse and has done way more than the betrayed spouse is aware. From what I can understand of what you posted, your wife only admits to what you already caught her on, an emotional affair. Is it true that your wife offered only what you already knew? Based on all you posted, I would assume she was physically cheating 3 years ago, also when the affair relapsed recently. Did you read her texts with the other man, and what was the substance of those communications? Were you able to read them? If she deleted them, can you recover them through software or forensic specialist? When you post about your wife resented getting pregnant again, which was your fault, or whatever she says made her cheat, I just hear blah, blah, blah. As you say, she could have divorced you. She didn't, instead she cheated. I am going to assume you proposed to your wife, she said yes to your proposal, you made vows in your wedding ceremony, and your wife knew explicitly that cheating was a deal breaker. My observation and assumption is that your wife was not an evil genius to hurt you. She was a confused individual at worst. She made a bad decision, or she was ready to leave you, but the other man was not what she wanted, so she begged you back. Who knows, but apparently she wants you now, not him. People who rarely drink can start drinking. I know a few during these recent COVID months that some have started using alcohol or other drugs to medicate themselves. And I know in my life experience several husbands and wives who had affairs similar to alcohol or drugs. An escape from reality, a way to medicate themselves in a less than happy reality. I believe it possible that your wife doesn't completely know what she wants, and I also doubt that you could know what was going on in your wife's head if she doesn't know herself. People don't do bad behavior because of resentment or anger. If your bank treated you badly, you would not rob the bank, or maybe you would, but resentment or anger is only one aspect. That is, we feel resentment and anger frequently enough, but we don't have to cheat, or rob a bank or whatever. We have other options available. Your wife chose cheating, not the other available options. Your wife is a fallible human being. She will make bad decisions, she will do things that hurt other people, and so will you. Although you might not cheat, you will do other things, say things, that will hurt her. You and her both have done it before. Maybe it was not considered that bad before. We all are allowed to decide what is important or not, and I have not yet been given a guidebook as to what infractions are less or worse than others. It would be nice to have a sports rule book. In football, the penalty of holding is 10 yards, offsides is only 5 yards. Bottom line, divorcing her is not unreasonable. Many people divorce even when there is no cheating, just because they decided they were unhappy. My wife cheated emotionally only. I read all her messages, and I reconciled. I probably wouldn't have reconciled if I didn't have kids, and part of my rationale was that my wife had sacrificed greatly for me throughout our marriage prior to her cheating. Because I had all my wife's messages, she couldn't lie to me about what happened. From what I read here, it seems most of the time the affair itself doesn't destroy the marriage, but rather the continued lying afterwards put the nail in the coffin of the marriage. In your situation, you still have serious doubts, and so do I, about the extent of your wife cheating. I would not find it unreasonable if you divorced, and I would not find it unreasonable to try to get the real truth, not just her claims, but some type of outside verification or evidence of the facts, before deciding what to do. She did cheat and she admits it. I personally could forgive depending on the situation, but from what you posted, I would need more info to decide. You can divorce if the emotional cheating alone was too much for you. If that is unforgivable, I would allow people to make bad decisions. Prior to my wife cheating, I never thought about whether I would leave her or not if she cheated. I knew and truly believed that she would never cheat. She just wasn't that type of person. That was on me, my bad judgment on her morals. She cheated on me emotionally with a guy from long distance for 3 years, 2009, 2010, 2011, it went hot and cold. I had all the messages. She never bad-mouthed me, she never said I love you to the guy, and that was part of the reason I was able to feel okay staying married, as well as other factors too numerous to post here. You have to consider everything and make a decision based on the totality of it, not just because you never properly thought out previously whether cheating was a deal breaker. Maybe your gut reaction that cheating is a deal breaker was not well thought out. You have to consider the whole picture for you, then decide. My opinion based on what you posted is you don't have enough info to make a decision yet. Thank you for your thoughtful reply. I just wanted to post quickly that I will be responding more in depth when I have more time to go through point by point, and I appreciate the support. Your second paragraph is the basis of my problem for sure. If I could 100% know all the facts and everything that happened, then I could easily make an informed decision. The fact is I don't for sure know the extent of what was happening 3 years ago. It could have been totally harmless as explained by her, or they could have been having an ongoing physical affair that got discovered and she went into damage control. I only have her word to go on, and it's very hard to trust only that at this point. The fact that he was the person she spent hours and hours a day talking with years down the road when we were in a rough spot sure adds a lot of validity to the rumored affair 3 years ago, of course. Yes, you are right that she has only admitted to the things. I have concrete evidence of her version of things is her completely innocent 3 years ago with no legitimate reason whatsoever for the rumor starting and having an 3-month-long emotional affair with the same man 3 years later without ever even meeting in person or the conversations becoming explicitly sexual. That of course is a very hard pill to swallow. I have not read a single text between her and the other man, not one. So you can imagine my imagination filling in the blanks. I told her there were programs I could use to recover her deleted text conversations, and she offered her phone right there and then for me to do it. At the time I had no hope for reconciliation, so I told her it didn't even matter, it was over. So that could be taken as lending credence to her story or just a hell of a bluff. I can easily believe my wife's version of thinking the marriage was over this spring before she contacted him. We had 2 or 3 fights that ended with us saying we should divorce, and I remember one fight before she contacted him where she specifically asked me if I foresaw our marriage getting better and me treating her better in the future, and I told her I didn't. I'm a pretty cut and dry person and I say what I mean, often to my detriment, so I can believe that from her perspective, our marriage was over and she panicked and thought she needed to protect herself and her ability to take care of the kids. It was a few months after these fights that I realized I didn't want a divorce. I didn't want to lose her and I needed to do better for her to make her happier. Of course this was 2 months into her affair, so my timing of personal epiphanies sure could use some work. Your point of saying hurtful things and people getting to decide what of that is important hits home with our relationship for sure. I've made more than my fair share of hurtful comments over the years and hardly even put any thought into them or remember them a day or two later. My wife, on the other hand, hangs on to those comments for years and thinks about them regularly and has explained how they shape her feelings and decisions. I, on the other hand, couldn't write down one or two hurtful things she's said to me in 15 years. It just doesn't stick with me past a week or two, so that has for sure caused issues over the years. I do wish I was in your position of having all the texts and calls available for me to go over that could deliver much needed peace of mind or give me the push needed to give up on it. I definitely resonate with your feeling like my wife has sacrificed a lot for me and our family, and for most of our relationship she went above and beyond to make me happy. I feel like I pushed her away more than she strayed, though the circumstances of the rumored affair 3 years ago would certainly clear up the optics of that. I feel like the position I've settled into at this point is that I wasted a chance to make this work and be happy by being unreasonable in what I was demanding of her and how I treated her. It wouldn't have taken a huge effort beyond what I was already doing to be her ideal husband, but I thought I already did so much in the relationship that I didn't have to step out of my comfort zone for her. The easy and best choice for everyone but me is to work it out and stay together. My wife claims to want nothing more than that. Now that I've come out with exactly how I feel about her, the kids would love for our family to remain intact and feel safe again. I just don't really think I'll ever get to a point that I don't burn up with anger and humiliation at the thought of her doing that, even if it was just an emotional affair, every day. I think about all the fun memories this summer as a family that are tainted, all the times I'd give her the evening off to go to town without any kiddos and she'd spend the time on the phone with him. First thing in the morning and last thing before walking into our house getting home from work was contact with him. I guess I'm thankful that it only went on for 3 months, but there are a lot of interactions and family activities that are now permanently soured in that 3 months. It pains me to go through my pictures and see a normal happy family when she essentially hated me and had her escape plan / backup man all set up. I'm still very torn on whether it's best to cut losses and start over for possibly a happier life for myself and honestly possibly happier for my wife, or if there is still any way to make it work and I can somehow treat her better after this. In some ways I feel I owe her another chance for what she has done for me and the kids in the past, but at the same time sometimes it feels like mission impossible that we could even get back to where we were before this summer. I'm still working through this and very unsure. Thank you again very much for your thoughts and advice. There is much to consider here and I'm sure I won't come to a resolution for quite a while yet. I appreciate your sharing and thoughts very much though, thanks. 7 months since I first posted. So much more came out. Update to 15 years together, 12 married with 4 young kids. Update link to first thread for full background if wanted. TLDR recap of my first post linked above. Found out my wife was talking / texting another man all day every day while at work for 3 months. It was the same man she was rumored to have had an affair with 3 years prior. I confronted her the day I discovered it. Mistake, should have gathered evidence. She admitted to only what I knew. Cheaters seriously follow a script, I swear. Claimed she was having an emotional affair because we were having serious divorce discussions and going through a rocky period in our marriage and was scared about facing life after, alone and incapable. I basically made the post in hopes someone could convince me my wife's affair was special and the exception. It wasn't, and I'd be able to keep my family and marriage and make it work if I wanted to. Most advice was to drop her. She was more than likely cheating physically as well, and it was likely much worse than I knew at that time, and I spent most the thread defending her. Oh, what a fool I was. Been putting this off due to lack of energy / motivation, but I felt I owed the community an update after all the advice that was offered, and I have spent countless hours reading stories and advice in this sub since. I don't even really know how to structure this or lay it out, but I'll just throw it out and go with it, I guess. Apologies for the length, brevity is not a strength of mine, winking face. Her story after I confronted her last November was she admitted to an emotional affair where she let a friendship get out of hand and progressed to basically being in a relationship where they talked all day every day and were essentially in the early stages of dating without being together. Classic emotional affair, I thought. Also one she said she broke off about 3 weeks before I discovered it. Phone records showed a huge drop in contact, so I took that as a positive for her and her story as well. She looked me in the eyes and swore to me many times over and over these important, to me, lines were never crossed. She never once met him in person, she did. She never once sent him pictures of herself, she did. Their conversations were not overly sexual, they were. She never once told him she loved him. She did. After months of feeling hopeless and like there was no getting past the emotional affair, I started to give myself a glimmer of hope in a future together. From what I saw in her behaviors, it all lined up with being remorseful and willing to do the work needed to keep me if I would have her. She offered her phone for data recovery, any monitoring software I wanted to install, any restrictions I wanted to put on her to feel more secure with her, answered my questions, open to discussing her affair, willing to do a polygraph whenever I wanted to take her, started individual counseling, called and explained any delay from her normal routine, sent pictures of where she was. I mean, you get the idea. I really felt she was putting in the work, and I let my guard down for a week and gave her affection and care like I used to, and she reciprocated tenfold, and damn it was beautiful and felt great, though at the same time, it made me very sad as I realized how little love she had given me for years. As part of me deciding to try to get past it, I decided to contact the AP's wife to get confirmation on my wife's story. She found out about 2 months after I confronted her that he wasn't divorced at all. He's just a predatory serial cheater who specifically targets married women because they are better at keeping their games secret. So I spent a day conversing with the AP's wife and got more truth from her in an hour than I got from my wife in years. It really was pathetic how far over all the lines she swore repeatedly she never crossed she actually was. I told my wife I had spent all day talking with the AP's wife and I knew everything, at least as much as the AP's wife knew, but did not let on exactly how much. She called me like crazy, I did not answer. She texted like crazy. I did not respond, aside that she needed to tell me everything once and for all. She agreed that she would. When I got home she was already packing up boxes, I guess expecting I'd kick her out for what she was about to admit to. So here's the whole story, best I can piece it together between her confession, my investigation and the AP's wife's info. My wife has been in and out of a relationship with this same man for 10 months out of the last 3.5 years, technically 4 times since late 2017. Each time this guy would start snooping around professing to finally be single and available, and each time my wife would eat it up and start her, in my opinion, monkey branching. 3 of the 4 times only ending it when the AP's wife would catch them on her end and threaten to tell me about it. Would she then break it off for a year or so at a time, until the next time he showed up on her radar divorced and available, for real this time baby. Lol. If you're keeping score at home, her biggest reason for wanting out of the marriage and hating me was her getting pregnant with our 4th child. You can read the last thread as to why I was at fault for that, and I do accept my fault in it. Unfortunately for that story though, I was able to nail her down by admitting her first affair with this man started 2 months before she ever got pregnant, so the biggest crutch for hating me and our marriage being awful went right out the window in my opinion. I'm of the opinion that whenever she thought he was available and they were talking, suddenly our relationship was garbage and without value. Whenever they would get caught and have to break it off, suddenly I wasn't such a bad guy after all. She of course denies this as her reality. I can't see it any other way though, as she never tried to break anything off with me or push for divorce outside of their active affair periods. The quick and dirty, get it, breakdown of each affair is this. First affair, strictly texting, flirting and a few mild pictures. Broken up by AP's wife after 2 months. Second affair, 1 year later, full emotional affair with constant phone calls, texting/sexting/ nudes and 2 physical sex acts without actual sex. Broken up by AP's wife after 3 months. third affair, 1.5 years later, full emotional affair with constant phone calls, texting/sexting/nudes, multiple meetups for sex acts while her mom or I watched our 4 kids and she was in town for errands, full on in love, planning their future together. She spent more time conversing with or with him than she did with me for 3 months until things between them turned sour after multiple red flags started showing and she realized maybe the fairy tale wasn't true again. I caught her and she said she had broken it off on her own 3 weeks prior. Phone records show a 90% drop in texts and calls after the date she said she ended it, so I guess it seems plausible if it really mattered at that point. Fourth affair, 1 month after I caught her she started back up with him again with daily texting, calls and sexting again but no meetups. She said she figured she might as well try to make that relationship work since she threw her whole life away for it and I wasn't going to stay with her. This went on again for 2 months until the AP's wife caught them again on her side. I had no idea she had started back up with him and she was continuing to play nice with me, professing her regret and wishing it had gone differently. AP's wife contacted her and blew up their relationship for the 3rd time in as many years. The AP ghosted my wife and refused to answer for any of the 1,000 lies he told her, and she broke down and cried on her mom's floor, realizing that he had played her yet again and there would be no white picket fence together in their future. He used her for sexting, ego stroking, nudes, a few sex acts when he could persuade her, and basically playing his game while he was working. This is the 6th affair he's had that I know of, so he's quite good at it by now. Oh, and yes, I do know the guy and he knows me and my 4 kids personally by name, and he was all good with helping my wife blow up our family just so he could get a little side action from her. It's all so disgusting. I honestly do feel pity and sadness for my wife. She allowed herself to get played by a player. She told me some of the things he would say and they were straight up cringe from a movie or something, but she wanted to believe, so she did. She threw away her marriage and the family we built together to be a con artist's side piece for a few months. It's pathetic and sad. That said, I don't take any blame away from her on this just because she got used to him again. Like, come on, you gotta learn at some point, right? She made all the horrible selfish choices that put her in that position, so she has full ownership of the consequences in my mind. I told her she got what she deserved from him and she agreed. So that was 4 months ago. I guess she's out of the affair now, because now that her boyfriend is off the table again I don't look so bad for the 3rd time. Lol. She keeps telling me she's just going to commit to me and work on keeping me until I tell her to stop. We're still living together but not really in a relationship, more just living together while we handle household responsibilities. I often tell her I won't be able to get past this, there's just too much. It's literally the worst kind of affair. She followed the cheaters playlist to a T in my opinion. She never committed to me while the amazing boyfriend was available. She says she couldn't do that to me knowing all the other stuff that was eventually going to come out. She didn't want to embarrass me. Like, I for sure wish you thought about that before you cheated on me any of the 4 times. Ha. I'm not under any illusions that a relationship can really come back from this. It's about as screwed as it can get. She always seems sad and surprised when I remind her marriages don't really come back from multiple affairs over many years, like it hadn't crossed her mind in that way or something. Our day-to-day is fine. We really were a solid couple for a lot of our 15 years. We make each other laugh and happy and hardly fight, and that's the super sad part. We could have and should have been really good. I think the best I'm hoping for is an amicable divorce and cooperative co-parenting, and that's a big bummer, but I think it's the reality. I've talked with a lawyer and am going again to clear up a few more questions I had pop up. Divorce isn't going to be great financially or schedule-wise, and I'm going to miss who I thought my wife was for the last 15 years, but reality can't be ignored forever. It's a scary proposition, but I'm confident I will make it through and make everything work for my kids. That's all that will matter for the next few years while I get everything stabilized. Thank you to those who made it through this slog of a post, and those who post here regularly with their advice, and also those who direct messaged me to ask for updates and check on how things were going. It is always nice to know someone out there cares, no matter how distant they are. I will make sure I respond to any and all questions/comments, though I may be slow to do so depending on schedule. Did you DNA test your kids? Sorry, had to ask. And did you get an STD panel? Not yet. I don't want them to have to carry any lies for me by not informing their mom. I plan on it as soon as I file, so it won't be their burden, and I don't have a pointless fight about spending $600 on something she swears is pointless. I made her get a STD test and share the results with me. All clear, thankfully, and that was big thing I was bummed out about, because I had been very selective over the years to minimize my sexual partners, because that was very important to me. But maybe you should be tested too, anyway. Because she lies, and she could have had something and gotten treated. Yes. I have been thinking lately I should get tested just for my own peace of mind. She probably just exposed me to 500 sex partners, so that's pretty cool. Collect evidence, record conversations with her, and if you're in a no-fault state, start dating again. I'm in a no-fault state, so the lawyer said infidelity will really not play a role in any of the process, which is just mind-blowing to me. But it is what it is, I guess. I don't plan on dating for a while after my divorce is final. I'm not scared to be alone, and I want to make sure my head is good before I pursue another relationship. Her constantly and repeatedly risking the lives and health of both of your lives by repeatedly exposing both of you two's lives by having sexual relations with a person whom didn't show her their recent STD checkup papers. DNA test the kids, especially the one she admits to having sex with him. The point of blaming you for the pregnancy, possibly being yours, is a red flag about our motives. Also, this is just the one affair you caught onto and have enough proof to make her admit to. She got lazy enough with her cheating to get caught. Atypically, people start cheating with one-night stands. Far from home with no likely blowback potential. Really stop and think back across your whole relationship. Does nothing now seem questionable to you with that in mind? You should at least have the "you owe me" full closure and honesty, since you gave them 15 fully loyal loving years and are still dealing with them amicably. Also, she did fully confirm her commitment to her BF when she said yes to your proposal. She then followed through and affirmed that false commitment by going through with the ceremony. Inform your adult kids fully and include the "she's still rapidly lying to you" instead of showing common decency. She chose to show spite, malice, disrespect, contempt, hatred, and no remorse whatsoever for what she has been doing for years. Get the DNA test before serving her. You don't need to inform her, rather do inform both your entire circle of family and friends of the entirety of what you know, with DNA test results to add, and what you highly suspect, after reflecting over the years for all the trips and nights out without you over the years. How often she would bring them in your home or around the kids is something you should know too. Do you continue to talk to the last AP's wife? Also, fourth, not your fault, as she doesn't need your permission to get any form of birth control. She is at least an adult. She can gain employment also. You really should have her do so, especially now, to let you spend more time with the kids and to learn to provide for herself instead of manipulating someone else into it. Pressure her into letting the kids stay in their home since only she made the decision to step out of the marriage and betray the family. They didn't do that, only her, and she shouldn't punish them because she wasn't willing to honor her commitment to you and needs to start putting your kids' needs and wants in mind first and foremost, like you always have. Extra great for when you get DNA results to go talk about with her parents. You rub and focus on how hard you tried for 15 years and how she just isn't willing. Does paternity fraud have any case in case the kids aren't yours? I don't know. That was one of the questions I planned on asking the lawyer the next time I spoke with him. We only covered about a third of what I had questions on the first time. I hear ya, it'd be nice to give her a taste of her own medicine though. Trust me, the idea of a revenge affair did cross my mind for a bit, but ultimately I decided it would probably hurt me for compromising my morals than it would hurt her. I had been very selective over the years to minimize my sexual partners because that was very important to me. You mean while you were together you had other partners too? I'm a little confused because you said you were together for over 15 years, so you presumably got with her when you were both very young, so where's the over the years coming from? Because if you both cheated on each other then it's whatever. Oh, absolutely not. I'm sorry if my phrasing was confusing. I've had 2 sexual partners by choice, turning down and not allowing for casual sex in my younger years 16 to 20. I mean, I had always planned on waiting until marriage to have sex. I know I'm old-fashioned and dumb, I guess. I didn't quite make it to my goal of waiting until marriage due to a crazy circumstance. I ended up living with my steady girlfriend at the time for a few months and could not continually say no night after night. Flesh is weak and all that, I guess. Lol. I never strayed from my marriage with my wife, not even an inappropriate text message to another woman in our 15 years together. I hope that clears it up, smiley face. Makes sense, and you upheld your part of the marriage vows. It's a shame your wife didn't do the same. And I'm going to miss who I thought my wife was for the last 15 years. Damn. Most of this post sounded like I posted it myself, but this line right here, amen brother. I actually wrote a goodbye letter to the woman who I thought was my wife, like she had died. I miss her, but I know she's gone forever. Replaced by this thing, this person I don't recognize. I like your post though. It shows the hurt you went through, that we all here are going through, but it also shows strength. I hope more people read it and see that, and know they can have that strength too. It's the worst crime in my opinion, to love so deeply and unconditionally and to trust so fully, and to be betrayed at such a deep and cruel level. And yet, we rise above it eventually. Same, man. Almost 15 years down the drain. 3 kids. Lots of great memories. All thrown in the ducking trash. I hate cheaters/liars. This is hard to read. They have been caught many times and they still went at it. It just goes to show what kind of person the 2 of them are. I would think twice before giving her another chance if I were you. They are both disgusting in my book. It's beyond salvage at this point, I think. Maybe had she come clean to me after a fair 1 or 2 begging forgiveness, but 4 times is just borderline psychotic in my mind. If I am you, I would go full nuclear on both of them. If you live in an at-fault state you can do so considering you have all the necessary evidence at hand. That's just me, but I know you still care about her despite what she did to you. I live in a no-fault state unfortunately. There really should be a class about how badly divorce can screw you before you get married. Lol. Most her family knows the basics but not the details or extent, though I assume that would change after divorce. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.